The word non sequitur is Latin for does not follow. And what it means is, in a conversation, if a person makes a statement or asks a question, and someone else follows up with something that has nothing to do with the conversation, that's a non sequitur. So let's give an example. I will make a statement, and one of you please volunteer a non sequitur. I like banana pancakes. Bingo. There you go. Lots of non sequiturs. Bingo, right? In this week's Torah portion, we have an apparent non sequitur when the whole chapter is about the details of which animals are kosher and which animals are not. And then at the very end, it says, "You should be holy, for I, God, am holy, and I took you out of Egypt." And I don't understand what chewing one's cud and having scales has to do with the exodus from Egypt. It seems like a non sequitur, but if we take a closer look, these are actually connected ideas. The first connection is that this might be a message about do not eat the foods of your oppressors. Food is a symbol of culture and values. And the deeper message is not just about which animals can you eat. The message is about do not keep the practices of the Egyptians. Really, kashrut, it's a little random which animals we can and cannot eat, but the underlying principle is really beautiful. We are not allowed to mindlessly consume things, and we have to learn to curb our appetites. The Egyptians had an appetite for slave labor, and they did not care that their consumption of this slave labor ate up the bodies, minds, and souls of the Israelites. So when we received God's commandments to keep kosher, we were also receiving the message to not be like our oppressors. Perhaps the most famous example in literature would be from Animal Farm by George Orwell. At the beginning of the book, the barnyard animals decide to rise up against their oppressor, the farmer, and their battle cry is, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. But by the end of the book, the pigs have taken over the barnyard, and it ends with a different catchphrase. As the pigs begin oppressing their fellow barnyard animals, they say, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. The Israelites are being told not to become the oppressor, and their dietary habits are a daily reminder of their values. A second connection we can make is that some of the categories of non-kosher foods, insects, reptiles, amphibians, and rodents, are not sources of protein that people generally eat unless there's no other choice. Even in cultures where those are a normal part of the diet, many of those cultures are in harsh climates where larger mammals are simply not available. But now the Israelites are not slaves. They don't have to supplement their lack of food because God is making food fall from heaven for them. They have no need to continue to eat these creatures. Free people have the dignity to eat more respectable foods. In the Soviet Union, the government persecuted all religions, but particularly Jews. And when Jews decided to practice their religion in defiance of the government or to seek the right to immigrate to Israel, they were called refuseniks. I one time had the opportunity to hear a refusnik speak about his experience when he was punished for practicing Judaism by being sent to a gulag in Siberia. He said that he continued to keep kosher there. And he said he's often asked the question, but don't you think God would understand if you had eaten treif food in such dire conditions? And he will respond, of course God would understand, but I needed to keep kosher for me. I needed to prove that I was still a free, independent human being. And by keeping kosher, I preserved my dignity, and it gave me the strength to persevere. We started this sermon by discussing non sequiturs. For some of us, living as a modern person and keeping kosher seems like a non sequitur. The tradition seems irrelevant and archaic. Certainly we'll follow the commandments that have to do with ethical behavior. Tell the truth, practice business fairly, take care of the poor. But when it comes to refraining from particular foods, is that so important? Is that still relevant? However, when we look at this passage that puts together the verse about keep kosher and I took you out of Egypt, so be holy, we learn that what keeping kosher is actually about is not so much the particular animals we can or cannot eat. It's about the value of restraining appetite and acting with dignity because we are free. Perhaps the opportunity to exercise these principles at every meal is not so much of a non sequitur as it might first appear. Shabbat Shalom.